All Century 21 real estate offices are independently owned and operated.
This is the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. Good morning. I'm Jackie Ruddy, broker, and with Pat Devaney, my husband, fellow realtor.
Good morning, Jackie. How are you today?
Oh, there's the question. Yes, I'm doing well. How are you today?
Wonderful.
Okay, good. We have with us for the second week in a row, Attorney John Bird, Associate Managing Attorney, Attorney Dan Naraki, Staff Attorney, both with North Penn Legal Services. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for being here. We're here every Saturday at 11 a.m., Sunday at 11:30 a.m., where we talk real estate. We have a full-time real estate office with many exceptional realtors. We have been guiding, assisting, and advising clients in real estate matters for 50-plus years.
You haven't been doing it for 50 years.
No.
No.
But my father started
right.
second generation. Here I am, possibly third generation. Patrick says, expresses some interest in it, but I don't know.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any questions, you can email them to us at questions@jruddy.com. That's questions@jruddy.com. Or you can give us a call at 570-344-6724. And when you go to jruddy.com, click on the webcam tab. It's one of the tabs at the top of the page, and get a live view of Dunmore Corners, see what's going on.
View our listings, search the MLS listings, and listen to archive radio shows by going to mobile-friendly jruddy.com, jruddy.com, where we also have listed all the podcast apps that our radio show is featured on if you like to do the podcast thing. Also, don't forget, look us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest, and Instagram. Okay. Attorney John Bird pretty much took care of the first week of homeowners, foreclosures, and the whole landscape of what's happening in that world. This week, I thought we'd devote our discussion to Attorney Dan Naraki's focus, which is the landlord-tenant issues that are swirling around. So COVID made it really interesting, right? The pandemic brought us to a moratorium, and there was a moratorium on evictions, and there were a lot of tenants that were unable to pay, legitimately unable to pay their rent because of the pandemic and COVID-19. But there were tenants also that took advantage of COVID that may have been able to pay rent. So your life got interesting.
Right. So that was the first, government response to COVID was to, as far as landlord-tenant is concerned, was to set in place a moratorium that said no evictions. That didn't say you won't be responsible for that rent, though. So what had happened is over that time, through the moratorium, rent continued to accrue, which then, now that the moratorium has been lifted, has led to lots of evictions.
Mass
having been
evictions,
filed.
right.
Like
okay.
that wave is continuing, since the moratorium has been lifted, there have been a lot of evictions filed. And so now people are in a position where they have to find another place to live, but because there were no evictions, sort of how we talked about last week with the foreclosure market not creating an available market due to no one pursuing foreclosures. Now landlord-tenant, it sort of was the same way. Tenants couldn't find places to go. So even if they wanted to move out, there was no place to go because other people weren't being evicted. Like it's almost like evictions are a necessary part of the housing market. It's similar to foreclosures. Like there's no available housing if there was just no movement going on. So people were stuck.
Well, we were landlords at one time, and we don't miss that title in life. We didn't have any problems with tenants paying us.
That's because we screened them.
Yes.
We went for, you don't have a credit score. If your credit score is not good, if you're not paying the cable company, I don't think you're going to be paying me. And we had certain instances where we got hardships, do me a favor, I've just had a run of bad luck. Every time we did that, we got screwed. Every single time. And there was three names I could throw right out at you if you want, but no. But we understand, and we would rather have had our apartments lay vacant than have to deal with the headache of people not paying the rents and possibly, destruction to the unit. So we have a little
experience in this area. But so we were blessed with the fact that we didn't have to really deal with, a lot of vacancies or lack of payment. However, this, and of course, we owned before pre-COVID.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I don't know anything about. We didn't own anything then, so I didn't experience. But there's landlords here that have had mortgages on their places, rely on this income to pay the mortgage, and then they're not receiving the rent. So it was a messy situation. There was relief, though, right? The state had.
Right. So the emergency rental assistance program, that's still available. People could still go and look for available funding. From what I understand, there was a lot of funding that didn't reach people that needed it for whatever reason. I don't think anyone really understood what the reason was that the tenants weren't getting it. But for whatever reason, there was excess funding, and there's still funding available. And I want to say the website is like consumerfinance.gov/coronavirus. Like if you search for emergency rental assistance program, ERAP, on Google, you'll find, links that will take you to be able to find what assistance is available in the county that you're in, or how to apply for the assistance that is available. To do that, we don't have a lot of tenants that would face problems with the landlord not wanting to cooperate with the assistant. And that just boggles me, like why would they not want to get that funding? If someone owes, say, $7,500 in past due rent, and there's an organization that's willing to connect the tenant with that funding, they just need forms and things filled out, and the landlord has to sign those forms and agree to accept the funding. I think the only conditions were that they couldn't evict for 60 days or something like that. Not an unreasonable, like you have to keep this person for the next 3 years if you take this funding, or not even that you'd have to sign into a new lease. It was just you could get all this past due rent. And so, if people are out there and they're having a hard time coming up with the rent, that's one of the places that they should go. Even if a landlord has a tenant that's having a hard time coming up with the rent, the landlord should be telling them, go to, in Luzerne County, it's CEO. In Lackawanna County, it's United Neighborhood Centers. Like there's an organization in every county that is tasked with taking these applications and getting this money to people. And they've released a lot of people should be aware that as time has gone on and they've seen that there's excess funding and it isn't getting to people, they've sort of, they relaxed some of the restrictions that were imposed. So you had to supply a lot of documents. They wanted, everything under the sun at the beginning, and now they'll take an affidavit that you swear that this is your income situation.
So they relaxed the rules.
Right. They relaxed the rules required for people to apply for the assistance.
Okay. I would think that a landlord would want to avoid eviction at all costs, because eviction is not an easy task.
Right.
Yep. Why don't you walk us through that eviction process? We did it at the break, and I found it fascinating.
Right. So an eviction in Pennsylvania all evictions must start at the magistrate level. So Pennsylvania has a summary process for eviction, which was initially created and intended to allow landlords to be able to get someone out really quick. Without having to go through a lengthy legal process, they could give them a notice to quit, and that could be waived by a lease, but then a hearing has to be held within 10 or 14 days. Within a week, it's usually scheduled. 21 days after the hearing, you're out. That's pretty much it. You get a 10-day appeal period after the hearing, and then you get a 10-day final notice period, and then on the 21st day following the hearing, you're evicted. You could be physically removed from the property. The only way to prevent that would be if you can afford to pay the rent and you appeal it. If that happens, the eviction could be delayed for basically what happens is it gets appealed to the county court and it proceeds as a typical civil lawsuit. And anyone that knows how long civil lawsuits take, that could be some time. Pleadings have to go back and forth. Discovery could occur before anything is either arbitration or a bench trial is scheduled. So that takes time. And so it could be months to, I've had some cases take years before they actually reach a court. The benefit to the landlord during that period is that they have to pay, the tenant has to deposit rent with the court every 30 days. So the landlord's interest is protected during that appeal period. They miss one payment.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to ask what happens
if
then.
they miss one payment. It's not even a hearing or anything. It's a simple what they call a precipice to terminate the stay of eviction, and that's a request. So it's the landlord could fill it out, take it down to the court himself, and then that's it. The stay is lifted, and they could move forward with the eviction by having a constable serve a 10-day notice, and then they're out 10 days after they've missed that payment. So I like the way that it works. I think it's a
fair,
fair,
yeah.
Right? Like it seems like a fair process for both parties. Like if the eviction is going to be delayed at all, at least the landlord will be compensated for their property while that delay is occurring. And that's if the tenant can't pay rent. Unfortunately, eviction is the only
option on the table, right? Because here's landlords during this whole entire time, their hands were tied, and they did have, the financial responsibility. What happens when when the property goes into foreclosure because the landlord hasn't paid?
Right. As far as the tenant is concerned, if they're still in the home,
right,
they stay in the home, until someone evicts them. So even if the property were to change hands through a foreclosure, right? Unless
and there are increased notice requirements for tenants who are in a foreclosed home. There is a Protecting Tenants in Foreclosure Act, and that gives some increased
protection.
Right. And typically just in the way of notice requirements before they have to vacate the home.
Right. And sometimes I've heard stories where the tenants are actually getting the mail and they find out that the property's in foreclosure.
Same thing with tax sales.
Pre-foreclosure, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so that could be very traumatic.
Right. That's usually a scary call that we get from clients is, the sheriff just served me with a notice regarding foreclosure saying that you're in default on your mortgage, that the landlord's in default on his or her mortgage, and they're going, and so they're sort of preparing for what's going to happen when this house is foreclosed on, them being the tenant in there. And sometimes, a lot of times, they're still paying rent to the landlord.
I was just going to say, and they've been paying their rent, and here they're going to get thrown out to the curb, right?
Right.
So it could be very, very messy. Do you see much of that?
Right. Every now and then, we see cases where there's been a foreclosure filed and there's a tenant that's at risk of losing their home because of the foreclosure. Sure.
Okay. It's a
happens.
fact of life, right? Attorney Dan Araki, who's a staff attorney with North Penn Legal Services, deals with landlord-tenant issues. And we also have attorney John Bird, who is the associate managing attorney at North Penn Legal Services and who deals with the homeowners and foreclosures. That's your department, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How does someone get in touch with North Penn Legal Services, please?
So they can give us a call. Our intake line is 1-877-953-4250. And like I said last week, for people afraid to use that to use the phone, they can also go and apply online at northpennlegal.org.
Okay. And
there's no cost.
And there is no cost for for our services. You do have to be income eligible for most services, but there is no cost.
And that's what the intake line is for. They take callers through that process. There's also an application online, and then someone can sort it out and get back to the person that makes that inquiry online, and then you take it from there. But, people hear attorney, and automatically it's a lot of money. That's what they're thinking. They're already down on their luck and down on life, but you provide services free of charge.
Right. That's what North Penn Legal Services is there for. It's like we sort of fill in the gap where you don't have in criminal cases, you have a right to an attorney. In a lot of civil cases, there's the case will generate a fee itself. So, personal injury cases, tort claims, malpractice, stuff like that. For the cases that we handle, like landlord tenant, where we're defending the tenant, or consumer debt defense, or custody family issues, you don't have a right to an attorney. And if you can't afford one, then you're stuck without one. So,
and those are the times you need one.
Right. And that's why North Penn Legal Services exists.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Pat?
Yes, we have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home at 23 East Mountain Road in Scranton for $289,000. This is a unique home. It was built in 1990, and it's got 2 bedrooms, ranch style on the street level, and then the lower level is another 2-bedroom that's an in-law suite. And it's on the side of the mountain up there on East Mountain. So it's really nice. Each floor has a 10 by 20 deck off the back of the building where you have a really nice view of the city. It's a great view up there. This home is ideal for many families with this unique design, and it also has a new roof. That's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home at 23 East Mountain Road in Scranton for $289,000, and that's listed by Jessica Ruddy of our office.
Okay. Would you like to know or hear about the commercial real estate market predictions for 2022?
Predictions?
Predictions.
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I like
Okay.
predictions.
This is from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And so commercial real estate is poised to remain stable in 2022. So multifamily units will see lower vacancy rates. No surprise there. And while industrial and retail will stay steady, office vacancies will rise because more employees are
Staying home,
or employers have moved to a hybrid model. So asking rental amounts will grow a substantial 10%. Due to lack of inventory on the housing market, more would-be home buyers are forced to rent because there's nothing out there. They can't find anything. That's leading to more demand of rental units. As cases of different COVID variants rise, employers are forced to grapple with the consequences of having people indoors together. So office demand has dropped again. Office rents are expected to decrease. Employees working full-time remotely has dropped, though.
Yeah, they say everybody's getting back to work.
In November, 17.5 million Americans were working remotely full-time, and that's up from 8.9 million in 2019. So that was already a trend that was starting, right? But COVID kind of forced it. Many offices have moved to a hybrid schedule, and so that's led to the less space demand and lower asking rents. The report found that retail sales were up 16% year over year.
In commercial?
In November, leading retail spaces and industrial spaces to remain steady in demand. The vacancy rate in retail spaces has risen, while industrial remain the same. Both asking rent prices are expected to rise. Interesting, right?
Oh, that's a prediction? You're going to stick by it?
They're not my predictions.
Okay.
This is from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. So we'll keep a watch on that, okay?
Okay.
All right. Stay with the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate on 94.3 FM. The Talker will be right back.
How smart is a Century 21 agent? They have more brain power than a barrel full of Einsteins and the gentle wisdom of a monk. They know your city, your neighborhood, and they might even know your mom, so watch your language. They can simplify, multiply, and leap tall mountains of paperwork in a single bound. Plus, they know where to find the best cup of joe. This is who they are. This is what they do. Century 21 agents. Smarter, bolder, faster. Each office is independently owned and operated.
Hi, this is Jackie Ruddy from Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. Is real estate on your mind? It's on ours 24/7. Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or in need of an appraisal, you have questions, we have answers.
Thinking of buying or selling a house and have questions? Tune in to the Real Estate Roundtable hosted by locally owned and operated Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate on Saturday mornings at 11 and Sunday mornings at 11:30.
Call 570-344-6724 or visit jruddy.com. That's JRUDDY.com. Welcome back to the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate on 94.3 FM The Talker. I'm Jackie Ruddy, in with Pat Devaney, my husband, fellow realtor.
And we're back.
We are back with attorney John Bird, associate managing attorney, attorney Dan Naraki, staff attorney, both with North Penn Legal Services. Attorney Dan Naraki, we're having a great discussion with you today on landlord tenant issues. Let's just dive right into it. there are so many myths swirling around out there, landlord-tenant myths. You know, people with evictions especially, you know, can you evict during the, let's forget about COVID. Can you evict during winter months? Can you evict special needs? Can you, if you don't have a written lease, is there a lease? What does it default to? Anything? What are the rights of the tenants? What are the rights of the landlord?
Right.
Etc.
So that's one thing. Whenever I've done a couple landlord-tenant presentations in the past, and I always include a slide, asking the question, which of the following can be evicted? Or which of the following cannot be evicted, rather. And it'll start off with, like a pregnant woman, an elderly disabled person, a single mother with a family of 4, anyone in the middle of winter, between November and April. And none of the above, and none of the above are protected. Like all of the above can be evicted. There is nothing in Pennsylvania that says you are protected from eviction because you're a member of a particular class or for any reason, really. There used to be a winter moratorium decades ago. And so that's where that myth may have come from. There is no longer a winter you can be evicted in the middle of winter. You can be evicted in the middle of a blizzard. Like there's nothing to stop the eviction from going forward. And not only that, but there doesn't have to be a reason in the first place, so long as there is no unexpired written lease. So as you were mentioning, Pennsylvania defaults to a 30-day lease, month to month. That's how people commonly refer to it as. I'm on a month to month. I don't have a lease. I'm on a month to month. In the law, we still call it a lease. It's an implied oral lease. It's not an explicit written lease, but it's still nevertheless, a lease as the Landlord-Tenant Act, views leases. So if you are on that month-to-month lease, there doesn't have to be any type of breach. The landlord could simply say, I don't like you. I'd like my property back. And that's it. You have to leave. As we discussed earlier, you can delay the eviction if you're the tenant and you drag out an appeal or something like that. But other than that, you really have no grounds in the law to say, I'm going to stay in your property and because you don't have a reason or because of anything, because I'm experiencing health issues, I'm experiencing hardship, I'm a single parent, I don't have anywhere else to go. None of those reasons will
keep you there.
Will keep you there if the landlord just says, I want my property back. Like that's pretty much it.
So I've talked to investors over the years. Some feel very strongly about written leases and some do not. And, based on some of the things you just said, it's really to the tenant's benefit to have a written lease. And so many tenants don't want a written lease.
Right. Absolutely. I think that that's really the only thing protecting you is a written lease. So if you have a written lease and it says you can't, it's good for 1 year, then you can't be evicted for that 1 year
as long as you meet right.
You meet all the obligations contained in that lease. So you pay your rent, you don't break any of the other rules, nothing like that. Then the landlord has to show that you've broken something in that lease in order to be able to go forward with an eviction. Otherwise, the eviction gets dismissed and you continue living there up until whenever the lease allows it to terminate. Some leases will automatically renew if notice isn't given so many months before the end of the first year, and they'll renew on an annual basis, So I think it's really to a tenant's benefit to enter into a lease and to have a lease in place, unless they were considering something like they're just temporarily renting it apart. They know that they're going to be moving on to something else, some other location, or buying a house, or whatever the case may be.
A different job, so on and so forth, right? But I can't tell you how many times it's when landlords come to us and they want to rent a property, they want somebody, they don't want to be renting it out every 3 months. So they want somebody long-term, right? So, but I can't tell you how many times we'll tell prospective tenants it's a year lease and they'll say, no, they don't want that.
Right. Short of having some known place that you're going within that year, I just don't think it would make sense for any tenant to not enter into at least for that year, without having some hesitancy to do it. It's beneficial for both parties.
Commitment issues, I guess, right? I guess it's commitment issues.
Right, I can't see the reason why. Without saying, I know in 4 months I'm going to be moving out of state, so I can't enter into a 1-year lease, and then ask your landlord for a 4-month lease, But, landlords want people that are there for a while. Tenants usually want to be a place where they can, where you can stay for a while. So.
And I just want to reiterate, because we believe we discussed this last week. This is not legal advice. This is information only, right? This is not tailored to your specific situation. And if you are having a legal issue, you should contact an attorney.
And that goes for anything that's been said since I started talking.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to say this at the start of the show. Material presented is intended for information only, not as professional advice, and should not be construed as such. We have to have that disclaimer after everything you gentlemen have said these past 2 weeks. But yes, Attorney Dan Naraki, you know your stuff regarding landlord-tenant issues, and this is your thing at North Penn Legal Services.
Right.
And it keeps you busy.
Right, it does. I sort of just fell into it. So, those were the cases. That's what was needed at the time that I was hired at North Penn. So I just started doing a lot of landlord-tenant cases. And because there have been so many, and because of the pandemic, and I got a lot of experience with landlord-tenant cases. So I've experienced a ton of different issues that could arise with them, and under all different circumstances and with all different people, and any from public housing or federally subsidized housing, like commonly known as Section 8 housing. Or
is that a myth that you can't get evicted from public housing?
Right. No, you can. If you get evicted from public housing, and you can be evicted from public housing, there's nowhere else after that. If you're in public housing, you're presumably income eligible for that housing. You're receiving a federal subsidy. So you lose that subsidy. You can't get Section 8 or other public housing if you've been evicted from a Section 8
and you've had cases
housing.
with that.
Right. Unfortunately, some especially with things like drug crimes or something, if that's what's going on in a public housing project, and they're very strict about that, and then that's it.
Nowhere else to go.
You're not going to be able to afford going into a private housing if you're going from a very low subsidized rent. It's difficult for people moving from private housing to private housing right now because rents have just increased across the board because of the limited availability of rental properties, and landlords know they can get more, so they're going to charge more, and then it makes it difficult for tenants to move around.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Attorney John Bird, Associate Managing Attorney. Attorney Dan Naraki, Staff Attorney, both with North Penn Legal Services. How does someone get in touch with you, please?
So they can call our intake line at 1-877-953-4250, or they can also apply online at northpennlegal.org. And all of our services are free. If you're eligible for the services, there is no cost. We encourage anyone out there who's experiencing difficulty paying for their mortgage or difficulty paying rent to give us a call.
Thank you, gentlemen. Pat?
Have you ever thought of buying some land and moving out to the country? Have you ever thought of it? I have. Well, I might have just what you're looking for. I have 5.5 acres of land on Hornbaker Cemetery Road. It's in Madison Township for $68,000. This is located on a quiet country road, and it's got 2 ponds, and it's out there. So if you want to get away from it all, this might be a deal for you. That's 5.5 acres of land on Hornbaker Cemetery Road in Madison Township for $68,000, and that's listed by Connie Seagraves of our office.
Join us next Saturday at 11 a.m., Sunday at 11:30 a.m. to listen to more of the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate on 94.3 FM The Talker.